It's all quiet on the Capitol tonight. That means the government is headed for a shutdown in less than an hour, our time. Good evening, I'm John McKay. An hour from now, hundreds of thousands of workers, well, they will be in limbo. Our Matt Howerton tonight has been following the situation. He's live tonight with the latest details for us. Matt, what do you have?
Well, good evening, John. Make no mistake about it. Our government is headed for a partial shutdown at midnight, and it's all because Republicans and Democrats in the Senate didn't want to approve a $5 billion measure to start construction on that border wall that President Trump has promised to build along Mexico. But we'll get to that here in a second. Here's what's happening at midnight. 1/4 of the federal government will lose funding. 420,000 essential federal employees will continue to work and not be compensated, and about 380,000 other federal employees will face furloughs. Now, some of those essential employees who will continue to work without pay during the shutdown includes over 40,000 law enforcement and correctional officers, customs and border agents, and over 40,000 Coast Guard employees. So, how did we get here? Well, often on Capitol Hill, lawmakers will pass a temporary spending bill to keep sections of the government going while they collaborate on long-term budget solutions. The House, which is controlled by Republicans, passed a temporary spending bill that put away $5 billion for President Trump's border wall. But once that bill hit the Senate, which is controlled by Republicans too, it didn't get the support that it needed, and now here we are at an impasse. President Trump, who vowed last week to shut down the government if funding for a wall wasn't secured, will now have to work with Democrat Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer to overturn the shutdown. They both made statements this evening.
The events of the past week should concern every American. This may have been the most chaotic week of what's undoubtedly the most chaotic presidency ever in the history of the United States.
We're going to have a shutdown. There's nothing we can do about that because we need the Democrats to give us their votes.
So, what's next? We're told on Sunday both members of the House and Senate will head back to Capitol Hill to start working on a compromise. Matt Howerton, Channel 8 News.
All right, Matt, thanks a lot for that. Patients